the waiting rancher. Dust rolled across the barren prairie as the late afternoon sun beat down on the ranch. A hawk circled high overhead, its lonely cry drifting down to the valley where a weathered man stood by the corral fence. His hands, calloused from years of rope and reins, tightened around the wood rail as he stared toward the horizon, searching. Ethan Cole was not a man given to nervousness. He had fought wolves that threatened his cattle, broken wild stallions, and stared down armed men who wanted what was his. Yet today, as he waited by the dusty trail for the stagecoach to arrive, his chest felt heavier than it ever had in a gunfight. For the first time in years, he had chosen hope. At 35, Ethan had built his ranch with his own hands. Miles of pasture, a modest cabin, a barn stocked with horses, and enough cattle to sell every season. But wealth meant little when every night ended the same, with silence echoing in an empty home. The wide plains could make a man feel bigger than life, yet lonelier than death. So he had written a letter, then another, dozens of them, until a young woman in Boston answered. Her name was Clara Whitfield, gentle, educated, eager to leave the crowded city behind for a fresh start. They exchanged words for months about dreams, about hardships, about the life they might build together. He had promised her a safe home, a loyal husband, and all the wide sky she could ever want. And today, she was finally coming. The distant rumble of wheels snapped Ethan from his thoughts. His pulse quickened as the stagecoach appeared in the distance, its team of horses kicking up a plume of dust. He straightened, brushing his shirt sleeves and tugging his vest into place. He had even trimmed his beard that morning, something his ranch hands teased him for. As the stage drew closer, Ethan's heart thudded. He imagined stepping forward, offering Clara his hand, helping her down from the coach. He pictured her smile, the shy greeting, the awkward but hopeful start of something lasting. The coach jolted to a stop in front of him. The driver tipped his hat. "Mr. Cole." Ethan nodded, his throat too tight to speak. "Got your passengers right here." The door creaked open. A small boot appeared, followed by a gloved hand gripping the rail. Ethan stepped forward, breath held, waiting for the first sight of his bride. But when the figure stepped down, his eyes went wide. Not one, two. Two women, moving carefully, their arms hooked, their steps synchronized in an unnatural rhythm. They were young, with matching auburn hair pulled neatly beneath bonnets. Their faces, identical, save for the different shades of ribbon tied beneath their chins. Their dresses brushed the ground in perfect time, and between them, where their shoulders touched, their bodies did not separate. They were joined, conjoined. Ethan froze, his world spinning. He had expected one woman, one bride. Instead, standing before him were two sisters, bound together for life. The taller of the two smiled nervously. "Mr. Cole? You must be Ethan." Ethan's mouth opened, but no words came. He blinked hard, sure his eyes deceived him. The other sister cleared her throat gently. "I am Clara, and this is my sister, Cora." The driver spat into the dirt and muttered, "Didn't envy you that surprise, rancher," before climbing back onto the coach. With a crack of his whip, the stage rumbled away, leaving Ethan alone in the vast silence with two brides who were not what he expected. The shock. For a long moment, Ethan only stared. He forced himself to breathe, to make sense of what stood before him. Their dresses were modest but worn, showing the strain of travel. Their eyes, bright blue, curious, and anxious, watched him with a mix of hope and fear. He remembered Clara's letters. Not once had she mentioned a sister. Not once had she confessed the truth that she was not one, but two. Clara stepped forward, or rather, Clara and Cora stepped forward together. Their movement was smooth, practiced like a dance. Clara extended her gloved hand. I know this is not what you expected, but I promise I am the woman who wrote you. Every word in those letters was mine. I only left out one truth." Cora's voice was softer, almost apologetic. "And that truth is me." Ethan's hand twitched to the side. He had imagined this moment for months, his hand closing around Clara's, guiding her into his world. Instead, he stood frozen, words strangled in his chest. The prairie wind rustled through the grass. The horses in the corral snorted restlessly. Ethan's world felt split wide open, just as the reality before him was fused together. Finally, he found his voice, gravelly and uncertain. "Why didn't you tell me?" Clara's eyes dropped to the ground. "Because men don't write to women like us. They see only the condition, not the heart. I wanted you to know me first, my thoughts, my dreams, before you judged the body I live in." Cora's lips tightened, as if bracing for anger. Ethan's jaw worked. He wanted to shout, to demand why he had been deceived. Yet something in Clara's trembling voice stopped him. He saw the courage it must have taken to step off that coach, to face the judgment of a stranger she hoped would be her husband. Still, his chest burned with confusion. One bride, two sisters conjoined forever. How could a man build a marriage like that? The awkward welcome. Ethan cleared his throat, rubbing the back of his neck. "The ranch house is just down the trail. You must be tired from the journey." Clara's face softened with relief. "Thank you." Cora said nothing, though her eyes flickered with gratitude. Ethan picked up their small trunk and led the way. The sisters followed, their steps slow but steady, their dresses brushing in rhythm. As they walked, Ethan's thoughts stormed. What would the townsfolk say when word spread? What would his ranch hands think? More than that, what kind of life could he share with two women joined as one? When they reached the cabin, Ethan pushed open the door. The home was simple but sturdy: wood walls, a stone hearth, a table with two chairs, a bed made with fresh linens. He had imagined Clara stepping inside and smiling at the life waiting for her. Instead, Clara and Cora stood together in the doorway, taking it in. "It's lovely," Clara whispered. "Yes," Cora added softly. Ethan set their trunk by the wall, then stepped back, unsure what to do. The silence stretched. He had fought storms, fire, and hunger, but this silence was heavier than all of them. Clara clasped her hands. "Mr. Cole, Ethan, I know this is much to ask, but please give us a chance. Judge me not for what you see, but for the woman whose words you cherished." Cora looked at him then, her expression unreadable. "And judge me too, for we are not separable." Ethan's throat tightened. He turned away, staring into the fire he had built earlier that morning. The warmth seemed distant. He had asked for a bride to end his loneliness. Now he had two women, bound as one, standing in his home. And for the first time, Ethan wondered if loneliness might have been easier than the impossible choice before him. The whispering town. Morning came pale and cold, the sun still low on the horizon as Ethan saddled his horse. He had slept little, the image of Clara and Cora standing in his cabin door replaying in his mind. Their shared voice, their joined steps. It had unsettled him more than the fiercest storm. Now, as he rode into town for supplies, he felt the same storm brewing in his chest. He had hidden them away the night before, telling himself it was temporary until he figured what to do. But towns never stayed silent for long. And indeed, by the time he reached the general store, whispers had already spread. "Did you hear? The rancher's bride came in by stage." "Not one bride," they say. "Two of them." "Two? You mean sisters?" Sisters joined at the shoulder, like some fairground showpiece. Ethan's jaw clenched as he pushed through the murmurs. He kept his hat low and focused on his business, but everywhere he went, eyes followed him, measuring him. He could feel it, the judgment, the curiosity, the cruel smirks hidden behind hands. When he finally rode back out of town, he carried not just supplies, but the weight of 100 stares. The sisters' bond. At the cabin, Clara and Cora were by the corral fence, watching his horses graze. The morning light caught their matching hair, the ribbon of Clara's bonnet fluttering in the breeze. They turned together as he dismounted. "You went into town," Clara said. Her voice held careful hope. "I did." Ethan tied the reins, then glanced at them, words already out. Cora's lips pressed tight. "Of course it is. Folks always hunger for stories stranger than themselves." Clara touched her sister's arm gently, steadying both of them. "We're used to whispers, Ethan. We have lived with them since childhood. But here we hoped for a place where whispers could fade." Ethan studied them. Despite their difference, They carried themselves with dignity. Clara's eyes were bright with determination, and Cora's carried a quiet, protective strength. Bound together, yet not broken. Still, he couldn't push aside the gnawing question. How could a man marry into such a life? The confrontation. That evening, as fire crackled in the hearth, Ethan finally spoke the words heavy in his chest. Clara, you wrote me letters. Letters that spoke of a future. A home. A wife. He paused, swallowing the dryness in his throat. But you never told me it would be 2 wives. Clara's face paled. I'm sorry for the deceit. I wanted you to know me first. And what about me? Cora's voice cut sharper. Did you think to simply ignore me? To pretend I am not here? Ethan looked at her. For the first time, he noticed the fire in her gaze. If Clara was the dreamer, Cora was the guardian, ready to protect, ready to fight. I didn't ask for this, Ethan said, his voice low. Nor did we, Cora snapped. But this is who we are. One cannot have Clara without me, just as I cannot breathe without her. If you want a wife, you must want us both. Clara reached for her sister's hand. Please, Ethan, give us time. You will see we are not a curse. Ethan turned away, staring into the firelight. His heart wrestled with anger, pity, confusion, and something he dared not name. A test of trust. Days stretched into weeks. Life on the ranch demanded work, and Ethan could not ignore the extra hands, even if those hands moved in tandem. Clara and Cora proved themselves eager. They learned to churn butter, mend fences, even ride in the wagon together with surprising ease. One afternoon, when a calf strayed from the herd, Ethan rode out only to find Clara and Cora already coaxing it back with a bucket of feed. They laughed together, their voices mingling in a sound so warm it caught Ethan off guard. Later, Clara looked at him with a smile. See, we could be useful. Even Cora, usually guarded, allowed a faint grin. We are not helpless, Ethan. That night, as he lay awake, Ethan admitted something to himself. They were not a burden. Not entirely. They were resilient, stronger together than most people apart. But strength did not erase the unease in his heart. The town's cruelty. The true test came when Clara and Cora asked to attend Sunday service in town. Ethan hesitated. He pictured the whispers, the pointing fingers, the cruel laughter. But Clara's pleading eyes wore him down. We deserve to be seen, she said softly. Not hidden. So he hitched the wagon, and the 3 of them rode into town. The church fell silent as they entered. Eyes widened. Children gasped. A man at the back muttered, God help us! What sort of thing is that? Ethan's fists clenched, but Clara held her head high. Cora's chin lifted in defiance. Together, they walked down the aisle and sat in a pew. The sermon carried on, but the tension in the room was thick as smoke. When service ended, the congregation spilled outside in whispers. A woman hissed, It ain't natural. A man muttered, Rancher's a fool. Ethan turned, ready to silence them with his fists, but Clara touched his arm. Don't, she whispered. We are used to it. Cora added, with steel in her voice. Let them choke on their words. We will not. That night, Ethan stared at the sisters across the supper table. He saw Clara's quiet bravery, Cora's fierce shield. Against the cruelty of the world, they stood unbroken. And slowly, against his will, admiration began to take root in his heart. The choice. Weeks passed. The ranch flourished. The whispers in town dulled, though never disappeared. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, Clara and Cora stood with Ethan by the corral. Clara spoke first, her voice trembling. Ethan, you've been kind, kinder than most would be, but we must know the truth. Do you regret us? Ethan's chest tightened. He looked at them, their shared body, their joined lives, their unshakable bond. He thought of the letters that had once warmed his lonely nights. He thought of the laughter he now heard on his ranch, the voices that filled his silent home. And he thought of the choice before him. I don't regret you, he said slowly. I regret the lie. But I see now, you are more than that lie. You're strong. You're proud. And whether I wanted one or not, you came as 2. Clara's eyes shone with tears. Cora's lips softened. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low but certain. If I take a bride, then I take both. That's the truth I've come to. For a moment, silence held them. Then Clara whispered, "Then you accept us?" Ethan drew a breath, the decision heavy yet freeing. "I do." The sisters exchanged a look, an entire world of relief and hope passing between them. Clara's smile bloomed like dawn. Cora's gaze softened, no longer only a shield but something warmer. And in that moment, beneath the wide prairie sky, Ethan Cole, the loner rancher, was no longer alone.